Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there. Today we're meeting a guest who shares her story of her path to becoming a professional collage artist. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, Women in the Middle, with over 1 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, today's interview has me smiling ear to ear. It's one of those times that I got to meet somebody who had difficulty imagining that she could even make a living doing what she loved. Can you relate to that? It brings me so much joy to hear stories like this, and I can't wait for you to hear her story too. But just quick, before we get going, I want to invite you to have a breakthrough. Now, I know when you're stuck in a midlife funk, feeling confused and unclear about what's next, it can be really hard to even imagine what might be on the other side of your breakthrough to getting unstuck and clear about what you want. So I want to offer an easy way to start moving in that direction. You can give yourself the jumpstart you need in the form of a breakthrough coaching call. It's a 2-hour private coaching call that's basically a deep dive into what's getting in the way of your clarity. We can coach on anything you need to make a breakthrough because, my friend, I have a feeling you're tired of wasting valuable time. So head over to my website at www.susierosenstein.com and click the Coaching and Workshops tab, and you'll see the booking link there. I have a few spots open now, and one of them can be yours. Okay, so as a midlife possibility coach, it's pretty common for me to coach on helping you see and eventually embrace what's actually possible. It's so easy to focus on what you can't do rather than on what you can do. My guest today had trouble imagining what was possible for her when it came to creating a career as a professional collage artist. Today, you're going to meet Catherine Rains. Until age 33, Catherine often said that she didn't have an artistic bone in her body. She discovered her life calling in the middle of an overwhelming day job where she first created a collage just to relieve stress. This simple beginning eventually led to quitting her day gig to manage a thriving art business. Then her journey took an unexpected turn when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. This led Catherine back to a day job for the next 10 years, traveling across the United States, creating almost no art at all. Then on January 1st, 2015, she decided to integrate the day job she loved with the art that she couldn't live without by setting up an art studio in every hotel she visited and followed a structured schedule to fit art back into her life. As a result of this self-commitment, on January 1st, 2018, she returned to her greatest passion, which was art, and now is once again creating and teaching sacred art full-time. I can't wait for you to hear Catherine's story, so please enjoy. Hi, Kat. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Well, I am so honored to be part of your incredible podcast. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, you are a mixed media artist and a mixed media collage artist. And let me tell you how giddy I got when I opened your email, because you're doing stuff that I love to do. And it was just so much fun to see your work in my email. So I'm very excited to talk to you about all of this. So as you know, I like to focus on people's journeys and how we figured out what it is that we're really passionate about. And usually for so many of us, we didn't start out doing this to make a living. So I would love to hear what was going on for you in the last 20, 30 years and what you were doing that was different and how you figured out you wanted to go in this direction. So take it away.
Wow, that's a big question there.
Oh, yeah.
So, I set my life up very early on to do something completely different than what I'm doing now, as I think a lot of people do. I thought I was going to be a career development director in a major college, and I was doing that in my 30s. I had made a couple job hops, and I was doing really well. I was being rewarded for basically helping students figure out what they wanted to do, but I was managing a large career center. And my intention was to keep moving up the ranks, meaning you go to bigger and bigger universities. And it's a lifetime job. it's a government job, basically. You're paid for life. You got insurance. You're good. I did everything right to get to this place. And I was miserable. I hated it, but no one knew. It was a secret thing among my own circle. Wow. But professionally, people just saw competence because I was doing the job. I was being rewarded for, doing good work. So here I am, a career development director, basically a career counselor who hates her job, which is really kind of like a strange little combination there. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll get a bigger job. That will solve everything, right? And then I'm thinking, well, that's stupid. Why would you get a bigger job doing the same thing? You're going to hate a bigger job the same way you hate this one. So I started doing career development on myself. And this was in my mid 30s. And a classic thing we did with students was you write a list of everything you loved to do as a child, but weren't told to do it. So I said, okay, I can do that. So I wrote this long list. I had everything from Barbie dolls, kick the can, make forts, teach my sister how to read. All these things were fun. And in the middle of the list was the word collage. Now I have a picture of myself in my studio of myself as a 10-year-old holding a collage, only collage I can ever remember making. And I saved this picture. So I was like, wow. I really thought it was something. It wasn't, I was a 10-year-old, but I said, I'm desperate. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And all of the career tests said I should be a career development director or a counselor or a coach, but I don't like it. And by the way, it's not like I do like being a counselor. What I didn't like was managing counselors. I didn't want to be a manager of other people, but I didn't really know that was the hiccup at the time. So I saw this word collage, and just so you know, Susie, in my family of origin, I was considered the unartistic one. So I can't draw, I can't paint. My parents were artistic, but I was crafty and I grew up in a lot of crisis. So there wasn't really time or encouragement for me to do anything artistic. And I really thought I had no skill. So I would knit and I would crochet and paint by number, but never anything without directions. So one Sunday, I said, okay, you got to do something here. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I pulled out all of the catalogs and the magazines in the house. I tore them all up and I made my first collage in 20 years, and just joy poured out of my cells. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Now, by the way, I made a very rudimentary, very juvenile looking thing, but it gave me so much pleasure that I said, okay.
What was it, Kat? What was it? Did you notice it? Because it was so drastic, like the pleasure was off the charts. So were you able to figure out what it was? Was it the cutting, the tearing, the placing?
Well, I'm a very spiritual person. So even though I was picking out like random pieces and sticking them together in this collage, my brain was saying, wow, this is painting a picture of something. This is giving me a message of something. So in my mind, there was a message being given to me. That was part of it. And I just love the idea of putting images together without having to paint or draw. So it was incredibly satisfying creative wise, although I really didn't understand it at the moment. I just knew all I cared about was this is fun. And so I started doing it all the time, like every day. And every day I would spend, a couple hours doing these collages, and they weren't good. Now at the time I thought they were phenomenal because they were painting my story. Every collage basically was like a Rorschach's test. Is that how you say that? Of where I was in the moment. And, they got a little bit better over time, but they were very juvenile. And I knew they were juvenile because at some point in my journey, I framed them and I put them all over my university job in my walls. And my students would come in and my colleagues would come in my office and they would go, oh, you've got kids. I don't have children. But for some bizarre reason, this didn't bother me because to me, this was my soul on the wall. I was sharing my soul with you. So I loved it. But secretly in my brain, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could do this for a living? But, the other part of me says, don't even think about it. That is so unrealistic. So I continued on my way. And eventually I moved from a university job to a corporate job. And almost as soon as I moved to this new job, by the way, the job was exponentially better. I didn't manage anyone. I was a trainer, a corporate trainer using the Myers-Briggs. this personality tool. So I loved the work, but the art thing was still in my brain. Like, oh, I want to do that, man. But I didn't know how you can make a living doing that.
Right.
So I took my very first art class almost as soon as I went into corporate life. It helped that I made a little more money so I could take a class. And I took it from a magazine collage artist, someone who was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And they were making money in Santa Fe, New Mexico in galleries. So I took this 5-day workshop, and in 5 days, I went from pretty juvenile to not bad. And so for the next 4 years, I traveled the country for my corporate job while I was doing these new collages and interviewing every artist I could get my hands on. I would go to gallery openings. I would just bump into people who were doing what I thought I wanted to do. And I would just interview them. Like, how'd you do this? I want to do this. Are you making money? How do you make money doing this? Because I'm not going to be starving. That's not my game. So that's how it started. That's how I found it. But it took a lot longer to actually get to the point where I am now. I am a full-time artist and I do make a living doing this, but it wasn't A to B. It was more like A to Z, before I actually found the way to do it.
So it's interesting you interviewing these artists. Did you do anything with the interviews, or this was all for you? This was
It was all for me. Like, I would go to a gallery opening and I would track down the artists and go, oh, how'd you do this? Or I would go to a fine art festival where artists are selling, usually at fine art festivals. They're, selling in front of you. And I would say, are you making a living? So I'd be just like really doing interviews to try to figure out the pieces. Like, how do people, because somebody's making money doing this. Not everybody's starving here. So I want to be a thriving artist. So that's what I was doing. I was trying to figure out the puzzle.
And were you just interviewing collage artists, or were you also
no.
Anybody?
Well, I was saying that's not true. I probably was focused on what I would call a mixed media artist. And mixed media to me, collage is what I say I am. Collage is what I do. But mixed media is part of it. So mixed media is anything in addition to paint. So mixed media could be paper, it could be paint, it could be sculpture. When you bring in more than just one media at the same time, that's generally mixed media. But my version of mixed media is lots of paper, usually painted on. So I paint my own papers and then turn them into collages. I also use magazine pieces, old books. So it's a variety of different things that I pull all together.
Did you love paper as a kid?
Well, I was actually an early scrapbooker. So I guess the answer to that would be yes. But I scrapbooked before it was cool. Like now they have all these fancy ones. Mine was very rudimentary, but I was taught as a young child to kind of chronicle my life. So I've always done some kind of, I don't do scrapbooking now, but that actually is kind of the origin of it.
Yeah. And that makes sense too, because when you said those juvenile collages were telling a story, sharing your soul, right? So right. I'm just looking for the pattern or theme, right? And so the other thing that we have a lot in common. Like, we don't know each other yet, but we have a lot in common. So I was crazy about papers. I did calligraphy when I was 12.
Really?
And that's what started me off. And I just became fascinated with ink and pen and papers. Like, I always imagined if I could have a paper store, this is way before internet, right? So I imagined a bricks and mortar where paper would come. I could touch the paper. This is before scrapbooking, and I just was always so fascinated with paper. So I feel like I've been meant to be a collage artist, but I just haven't gotten there yet.
Hey, there's still time.
I think you have a quiz or a course for me too. I just have a feeling.
I think so.
Okay. So you said, for sure. So you said there's lots of paper with collage and it's usually painted on. So when did you start to shift your thinking that you could actually make a living from this? So was it the quality of your art, or was it more the path forward was clear? How did that happen?
Such a good question, Susie. It was a combination of both. So after I took this one simple class, my quality jumped considerably. In fact, I had someone offer to buy my art almost immediately. But, one piece does not make a living, so I knew I couldn't just quit my job. And at the same time, I was talking to a lot of people, and I was kind of getting a sense of how do people really make money doing this. So the two were kind of going together. And in the meantime, I'm still practicing. I'm doing this collage all the time, basically as a hobby because no one's paying me for it and I'm just enjoying it. But at the end of the 4 years, marks my 40th year. So I'm 40 years old. And I just said to myself, when are you going to do this? To me, 40 was like ancient, right? So I was like, when are you going to be an artist? Are you going to wait till you're 60? For God's sakes, do it. And I was married at the time someone who had health insurance and they could support me, so I didn't have to jump without some kind of, a backup plan. So 40, I quit my job and I loved my job, but I said, this is the time. I got to go. I got to try it. And I spent the first year from 40 to 41, just experimenting and trying to figure out, like getting my voice, like what is it that I want to sell? And then the second year I started selling. I started going to fine art festivals. I had a few one-woman shows. I sold wholesale, retail, and I did that for 4 years. And it was the best time of my life and also the worst time of my life. The best time of my life because I got to do it. I got to do the work. So I was doing work that was meaningful. It was powerful. It was very spiritual. It was just like my beginning work. They all told stories. They all had very spiritual titles. But it was the worst time of my life because I didn't realize how stressful it would be to make a living as an artist. Every moment of every day, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to sell more? I worked 7 days a week, 12-hour days. It was production work. I was doing a lot of original art, but I was also reproducing my art into magnets and journals, cards, getting inventory into stores, a lot of repetition. And that was the hard part. And so what I kind of realized at the end of 4 years is that maybe I wasn't ready to do this. And life actually kind of helped me out with this. I was kind of doubting, what I was doing. Even though I wanted to be an artist, there was never any doubt about that. I just didn't realize how hard this was going to be. And life gave me breast cancer. And I was 44. And, on the surface of that, it sounds like it's horrible. And it was traumatic at the moment, but it actually redirected me. It was like, okay, now what are you going to do? So at the end of breast cancer, my life started shifting. I realized, I probably need to get my 401 together. And at the same time, my husband decided he wanted out. And now I'm suddenly by myself. And I went, wow, this is a good time not to be a full-time artist because I need health insurance, right? So I went back to my former corporate job with the Myers-Briggs company, and it was just divine timing. So I went back on the road with them. So my job was traveling as a corporate trainer, and I traveled pretty much every single week. But my intention was never to stay. My intention was just to get myself stable, put a lot of money in the bank. I'd health insurance, and I'd figure it out. Somehow I was going to get in a gallery. I'm traveling all around the country. I'll find a gallery. I'll figure something out.
As you're speaking, I can't stop thinking about your physical space. So where are you putting all your paper? How are you organizing yourself? And when you're traveling, you can't take your stuff with you.
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay. So you figured out how to travel with it. So tell me a little bit about the mechanics of having this passion and traveling and managing your space.
That's a great, great question. So the thing is that for the first, I went back to work intending not to stay there. I'm thinking 3 years tops. That's what I told everyone. 3 years and I'm gone. I'm right back. Somehow I was going to save money and go back to full-time art. Well, 3 years turned into 10 years. And when you're traveling like that, I almost did no art. So for 10 years, I basically was artless. And
I can't even imagine that. Like that must have been so hard.
It was very painful, but I would do it on the weekends, as a hobby every now and then I'd pull it out, but I wasn't doing it like I did before. I wasn't making a living. I was barely selling anything. So at the 10-year mark, which is 2015, I said, hell, you got to do something. You have got to change your life. But I wasn't ready to give up this corporate job because, the golden handcuffs is real.
Yeah.
I was making great money. I had an insurance policy and I liked the work. It wasn't like this was a bad job, but I wasn't doing my life's passion. So 2015, like January 1, I sat myself down. I said, okay, somehow you got to integrate this art into your life. So this is what happened. I made this outrageous plan that every moment I had free, like no television, no reading books, those are all moments you can do art, right? So here's the schedule I came up with. Every day you get up at 5 a.m. If I'm home, because I was home like 1/3 of the time, when I'm home, I had to be at my studio, which I'm sitting in it. I had to be at my studio desk by 6:30 a.m. I would do art for 3 hours. That would get me till 9:30. At 9:30, I would start my day gig. And then I would work like till 6:30, 7:30 at night when I'm home. When I'm on the road, I carried 2 50-pound suitcases. One was a complete art studio in a suitcase. So I had like 20 pounds of paint, canvases, drop cloths, anything I would need to make collage on the road. And so I would work all day. And then my goal was at 7 p.m., I would be fed in my hotel room with my studio set up. And I would collage from like 7 to like 11 or 12 every night.
Okay. Hang on a second here.
Okay.
I had a feeling something interesting was, I know when there's something good that needs to be asked. Okay. And I just couldn't imagine you traveling for 10 years without art. So I knew you had to figure it out at some point. So you're in a hotel room. You're not renting studio space when you're traveling. You're in a hotel room. And I would imagine you figured out the hotel with the best room layouts for your studio.
To be honest, it didn't matter.
Oh, it didn't matter. Okay. And you had drop cloths everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you're going to town because collage is not something you do just in a tiny little space. I know there's phases and there's the paint and the paper prep and all that stuff. So how did this happen? How long were you in a hotel?
I did that for 3 years. So from 2015 to 2018, I held that 7 days a week. I held that schedule.
Wow.
And, so when I'm home, I'm always anticipating the next trip. So it wasn't like I'm packing my entire studio. I'm packing what I'm working on. So I know what paints to pack. Okay. I know what I'm making, like 4 or 5 collages at a time. I pack those, so there's some efficiencies going on here. Like I know how to file papers, like collage papers so that they are manageable in a suitcase.
Do you know how to make paint not explode on a plane?
It doesn't really explode on a plane.
Good. Oh my gosh. Cause I'm just thinking that's a lot of stuff in your suit.
Well, it's funny because since I've done, since I don't do this anymore, that was 2018 as I stopped, but, I've since found out that paint can explode. But it never did for me. I mean, now I've found out that you should actually put masking tape around of all your stuff and put them in baggies. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe you didn't do that because we've had incidents with toothpaste and with shampoo.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I've never had that.
Yes. So we use the duct tape and the Ziploc, sometimes a double Ziploc. Yeah.
Well, I was just lucky. The universe was working with me.
I think so. So you wait a minute. If you had 2 bags of art supplies, what about your clothes?
Well, it's 2 50-pound bags. 1 50-pound bag is just art supplies.
Okay.
Other one, I also had a training job. So I had to have an LCD projector. I had 50 pounds of just supplies and my suits. So
wow. Okay. That's fascinating. And 3 years.
And I produced a lot of art. And I sold some art in that time too. But here's the thing, Susie. The whole time, by the way, this was 12 years. It was a solid 12 years of being on the road, not intending to do this. But the whole time, pretty much daily, I am saying to whatever there is out there, higher power, universe, whatever you call that, I go, okay, make it obvious. When I should really go, let me know, because you know what I want. I want to be a full-time artist. But I knew from my last experience, my first experience, I really think I jumped too soon, which is, I guess nothing is too soon. It was the right time. I needed to experience it, but I had a lot more wisdom the second time around. I knew that I needed a better foundation. And so pretty much the whole 12 years, I said, God, tell me when to go and don't whisper it. I want you to make it freaking obvious and make it gentle too. I would prefer not to have a major disease. I don't want something horrible to happen to me.
Right.
But make it obvious, that I need to make a shift. And the universe made it obvious. So, 2018, I came up with this. All of a sudden I woke up with this idea. Ask your boss if you could go part-time, like be a contractor. Now, by the way, I'd already asked them before and they always said no to me, but I just had this feeling they were going to say yes. So my boss happened to have been a friend at the time. And I said, I mean, she's still a friend, but she was a friend. And I said, what do you think? And she goes, I love that idea. We'll save a lot of money and we'll just use you for what we absolutely have to. We'll cut out all the fluff. So what they decided to do with me was they would let me work 1 week a month. So 5 days a month. And I did that for quite a long time. And I still do that now, by the way. But
Amazing.
I do it less, but that amount of time, 1 week a month, pays my bills. I don't save any money anymore. But when I was in my corporate job, I saved everything. I mean, every penny. I drive a 15-year-old car because I'm not spending anything I don't need to because I'm going back to art. So I had a nest egg in 2018, so that I could afford the luxury of not having a corporate job, basically.
Yeah, it's so planned, and this is really a beautiful thing. In midlife, we're wiser. At that point in your career, you were a high earner, and so that you could save more quickly, and you basically seeded and padded your way because you were smart now, because you tried it the other way and it wasn't fun.
Exactly. That was the struggling artist. You might be doing what you like, but financially it's painful.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I love this. And the whole suitcase thing. Wow. And plus you look kind of little. It must have been a lot to carry around those suitcases. It
was actually, it's funny. I'm remarried. I have a darling husband and we have a joke that, I live on a 2-floor house and, he's my butler. So that's called a porter. He's my porter because these suitcases are heavy. I actually can't get them down the stairs. So
yeah. Wow. I asked my kid to carry the vacuum cleaner for me, just yesterday because I had to go from one little building to another little building and I could do it, but I had a feeling it was going to re-injure my back. So I'm like, I've got 20-year-old kids. They're in their 20s. They can do this for me.
Exactly. That's how I feel about the suitcases too.
Yeah.
It's actually dangerous. I have, all kinds of bone issues as well. So I gotta be careful.
Wow. Okay. So now you're on your way. You've secured the perfect part-time job and you have wisdom and you're talented. So how did you take the next steps? Because the other thing that kind of changed is the online world happened in that phase too.
Yeah. Yes. The best question, Susie. So I quit 2018. And what I did is I gave myself the gift of a year. I had enough savings. I'm not rich, but I'm still, I'm seeding things still by working 1 week a month. So I don't go into my savings. So I gave myself the gift of a year to explore art basically, because I hadn't really done it. I've been, since I was in my 30s, I said collage. Collage is it. I can't draw or paint. It has to be collage, right? Well, now I'm 57 and I'm thinking, maybe you can draw. Maybe you can paint. You just haven't had the time. So I just started signing up for art classes like a crazy person. I did portraits and drawing and landscape and flowers and watercolor. Anything that piqued my interest, I'm taking it, man. And I was having a blast. This went on for a year. And at the end of the year, I stumbled on this woman who combined collage and painting. And I had been doing a little bit of that combination, but not that well. I took her class and it just dawned on me. I am not a painter. I'm a collage artist. It's what I've always wanted.
Yes.
And from that moment forward, that was about 3 or 4 years ago, I realized go for what you've always dreamed of doing. So that's what I've been doing ever since. However, so it took about 3 years, so what year were we on? So about 2020. So at 2020 really is when it started gelling all together. And let me tell you how it happened. So I knew it was collage and I was developing kind of a voice in collage. And I put together this beautiful collection, what I thought was beautiful. I thought it was my best work. I launched it very well on Instagram. Not Instagram. Well, I did Instagram, but I did my website and I knew how to do it. I had taken a course on how to launch online and it didn't sell. And I was devastated. Like, here's my best work. It didn't sell. but it was the best thing that could have possibly happened, because then I said, okay, if my best work doesn't sell, then you can do anything you want, because you're not going to make a living this way. So what would you like to do? So 2020 summer, I went to the beach with my husband. I brought limited art supplies, and I said, what I really would love to do is just tear up paper, put it back together in anything I want, knowing it's not going to sell. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get a sketchbook out and just make these wild collages. I made one a day, every day at the beach. And every one of them gave me the feeling of when I was 30s. When I first did it, it was like, oh my God, I love this. And I made seven of them in 7 days. They were little tiny collages. But on Instagram, I posted them every day. On Instagram, people started asking to buy them. And I went, oh, that's the trick. The trick is basically, and by the way, I didn't just make collages. I was basically emptying my mind. So I said, okay, I'm going to be empty, and I'm just going to put down whatever it feels good to put down, as opposed to trying to make art to sell. And that's what I was doing before. Mm-hmm. And even though I still love what I made, there was something different and energetically about this art that I was making that was just coming from my heart. And because I didn't think I was going to sell it, it was just for me. And from that moment on, so that's been the last 3 years, I've actually sold a lot of art. And now people started asking to learn what I do. So I started teaching art a year ago. And that's actually producing a full living, as opposed to eking out almost no living, other than I had a part-time job.
Well, plus I would imagine your students want your art.
Yes, they want my art too. But I'm also teaching them how to do my art. The kind of art that I'm doing, I'm selling small. So you don't sell for a lot. So You'd have to be a freaking factory to make a living making small and selling it that way. So I'm totally okay with teaching people how to do my art. I'm still making my art in the process, and I am selling it, but I'm not relying on selling my art.
Right. I see what you're saying, but you don't need to. It's another way that people are going to discover your art. Like, I love nature photography. I have some of my stuff framed and blown up for sure. And I also purchase nature photography from other photographers because I love it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's true for me too. I buy from other collage artists. I just love it. I like having it. It inspires me.
Yeah. Okay. But here's the thing. So, you're teaching, but not too long ago, we didn't have the option of teaching online, and now everything changed, and now teaching online. So how did that all go for you? Because you hadn't been dreaming about teaching online for as long as you've been dreaming about being a collage artist.
No, I really didn't envision teaching at all. That was not part of the game. But when I started, I had 2 years ago, I launched 4 collections. I did a beautiful holiday shop all online, sold out of everything I had. And my net gross, how much money I made was like $13,000. And I went, oh my God, I worked like a dog. I'm producing gorgeous art. People are buying it. It's selling out. But unless I go really big and start selling in galleries, which is a whole different animal and not even lucrative for most people, it just kind of came onto me. Why don't you just, if you can't make a good living selling your art, why don't you teach you how to do it? Because people are asking me. And I've always been a teacher. When I teach Myers-Briggs, that is the way I've been making money. I like to teach. I'm actually good at this. So when I just applied what I already know to teaching art, it was like a natural.
I'm not surprised. One of the things that comes out in my work with women in the middle is this idea that you're always on the right path. So it felt like you were on the wrong path by leaving corporate. You ended up going back for a lot of good reasons, but you still thought it was separate. It hadn't occurred to you that it's part of your journey. It's part of your path, and it was always part of your path. It's so good. I love when that happens. And that's one of the most common messages on this podcast.
I remember listening to a couple of your, the most recent ones. And I heard you say that. And I was like, I got to be on this podcast. That is why I contacted you, because I always feel that way. In fact, everything I've gone through that looked bad, breast cancer, divorce, you name it, I always think it's the right thing. There's not a mistake here, because they all led me to where I needed to be. So I'm totally in there. I think the whole path was set up from the beginning, including discovering collage, on a fluke.
Or rediscovering it because you liked something about it when you were a young kid.
That's right. Right. And that's what I think is the main, for other people, that I meet that don't, like they say, what's my purpose? Like, what am I supposed to do with my life? I would say, one, wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. And I think there are hints right where you are of the next step. And it doesn't have to be this monumental thing. Maybe it's you need to go take a nap. To me, it's like learning how to follow what does give you joy. Like if you can't follow the simple things, like I need to take a bath or I need to take a walk, like learning to follow the simple things leads you step by step to following your heart in a real way.
Right. Except when you don't trust your journey, then you're not looking in the obvious places for the clues.
Yeah. Or listening to because you're getting them. I think they're right in front of us.
Yeah, they're everywhere. There are lots of clues, but yeah, so good. And like you said, it's never too late to follow your dream. So now, you've been doing it. How long have you had your business and how old are you again?
I'm 63.
You're 63 and you've had your business. Is this the 4th year you said?
My 5th year.
5th year. Yeah.
And I started making money doing my business 2 years ago. Although I've been doing it forever. I mean, this has been my life for 30 years, but.
Right. And you're so full of energy. You're clearly delighted with where you're at and what you're doing. And I've watched some of your videos and your work. Like you're clearly in your zone of genius. You're glowing and you get to do something that's so fun. Your studio's beautiful. Like it's all so good.
I feel incredibly blessed. But, here's the thing. I didn't know it was going to turn out this way.
That's right.
When I quit my job, I didn't have a following or I didn't have a voice. My art was all over the place. I was doing watercolors and portraits and flowers. And I literally was just going for whatever felt good. Mm-hmm. And one little baby step at a time, it led me to where I started really, where I was meant to serve. And I think for me, not only, creating art, I really believe teaching art is where I'm meant to serve.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it.
I can do greater good than just making the art. Although I love making the art, but now I make art to teach others people.
Well, the Midlife ladies, we do enjoy creativity and learning how to do stuff that we didn't think we could do and leaning into it. And what I love about collage and the way that you teach it is that it's so accessible. Like you really do break it down. You don't need to be an artist. I teach, I'm a certified Zentangle teacher, like the structured patterns, and I incorporate that into the work that we do. And again, the reason I like it is, well, it's portable. It's very portable. But the other thing is that it's so accessible. You don't need to be an artist to make beautiful work like that. And you break it down too. And
that's exactly how I feel about collage. That, because my mantra when I was a younger person is I don't have an artistic bone in my body. I believe it. But when I think about collage, who can't tear up paper? Like, and the whole, the junk journaling thing is just collage. It's just like pasting down paper. It does make it really accessible to really anybody.
Yeah.
And like my intention with teaching this is to make it accessible, but also to actually show people they actually can make really good art right in the beginning.
Oh, I love that.
If you just follow a few really simple guidlines, and I'm talking anybody. I've taught thousands of students now in just 2 years, and everything I see that comes out is like, oh my God. I think I made it.
Oh, that's so good. So how can people?
But it's theirs, not mine. It's distinct for them.
I love that. I love it so much. So how can people best find you? Where are the places?
Well, my website is the easy place, KatherineRains.com. And on the website, and there's probably going to be a link somewhere else too, but there's a class called Collage Kickstart. That's a free 5-day class that in 5 days takes you through the whole process of not only making your own collage papers with supplies you already most likely have. You don't need to go get stuff. You have this in your house other than the paint part. to actually making finished collages the 5th day. And people are shocked that they can do this. And come up with really gorgeous work at the end of the 5 days. So that the sign up is on my website, and it's a simple link to get there. And it's once you get the class, it's lifetime access, so you can do it over and over again.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. Yes, all the links will be in the show notes. And you said that class is always available, which is great.
Right.
Amazing. So good. And is there anything, your best tip for somebody right now who's listening and thinking, I know she's saying this is easy and I can do it, but I don't know. What would you tell them?
Well, 2 things. One, as trite as this may sound, I believe that it's never too late to follow some inner thing inside of you that says, I've always wanted to be or I've always been fascinated with this. And whatever that is, and people may think, I've always loved books. Okay, that's good. Start there. Whatever it is you're fascinated with or that you want to do when people aren't around, what is that thing that you wish you had more time to do? To me, that's where you start. I think we make it really hard by making it lofty. Like, I got to find the thing.
I agree.
When I think it's as simple as, let me give you a good example. I'm in love with paint by numbers, which sounds crazy, but I love paint by numbers. And I'm not going to make a living off paint by numbers, although I know people that do. And I'm thinking that's an entry point for me. Even though I don't want to do this for a living, I don't think we have to make money doing what we love. This is just one of many things I love to do when I'm just like, I want to do something. So I do.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. I also have a free worksheet. It's specifically about looking for clues in your life to help you identify what you've always loved. It's called Passion Project 50, and I'll also include that worksheet link in the show notes. It's exactly what you said. It's just, you don't need to have all the answers. Just allow yourself the happiness and joy of doing that thing, or continuing to be curious about that thing, or watching the thing, if it's a show or a museum or a documentary or a book, but just doing that thing and not having to have all the answers.
Right.
A lot of people won't even try art or try collage because they think it'll look stupid or they will suck. They're not used to being a beginner and they don't know what to buy. It is overwhelming to purchase materials and supplies. You don't even know what the difference is between water-based and oil-based and this glue and that glue. And it can be very overwhelming, but I'm sure you've got supply lists and you break it down step by step. So it's easy to take that first step. And that's what I recommend. Take the next best step and don't worry about everything else.
Right. And collage is one of a zillion options. It just happened to have been the thing that fascinated me, but it could be paint by numbers. It doesn't matter what it is. And we don't need to make money doing it.
That's right.
But surprisingly, if some of us, if we just keep pursuing things that just fascinate us, like, who would think you can make money as doing collage? Really, that seems pretty far-fetched, but people are. I am, so it's funny. I watched Shark Tank not too long ago, and these 2 women who I think they both were divorced and they were kind of desperate. They didn't know what to do with their lives, but they always loved art and they loved paint by numbers, just by coincidence. And so they started painting pictures and they made them into paint by numbers. And now they're the leading paint by number company in the world or something like that.
That's amazing.
But I still don't think you need to make money doing anything. You do need to sustain and have enough money for your lifestyle. But, finding what we're supposed to be doing in our life may have something to do with money and it may not. And
the other thing is there's this topic of regret. So a lot of women our age are concerned about having regrets. And if you look at what typically becomes a regret, it's not allowing ourselves to be happy. And so where does happiness come from, right? Well, it's a lot of times what makes you happy. You know what you need to think to feel happy. And when you don't allow yourself to move in that direction, to lean that way, you're preventing yourself from being happy. And a lot of people were told that they don't have skills. You're not the only one who was told from that you're going to make a living. Like, it's common advice, that we got from parents who wanted to make sure that we could sustain ourselves.
Right. And I'm grateful, that I took that path. Would I have liked to have started this when I was in my 30s? Yeah.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my path. I mean, I'm clear why it didn't happen that way. I learned a whole slew of things that were perfect that got me here. So I don't have a regret, even though, I can say it would have been nice to start in my 30s. But you know what? 63 is the perfect time to be doing this.
100%. And it's a perfect time to take a class with you. So please, if you're interested, check out those show notes or go to CatherineRains.com. That's Catherine with a C, or collageworkshops.com. And you'll find a link there for you to get this free class. So good. Catherine, thank you so much for reaching out. It's been a delight to meet you and to see what you're up to, and to just really appreciate your path, what kind of courage it took. Think about you schlepping around those suitcases to the hotels and doing that for 3 years. I'm very impressed with your commitment to yourself. So good.
Thank you, Susie. It was a complete delight talking to you. I think we should go and have some coffee now. Could we?
I would love that. Okay, that's it for this episode. My goodness, what a story. I love how Catherine's art journey really started with her questioning her own narrative about her personal relationship with art. Can you imagine how much happiness she would have denied herself if she wasn't curious about what she had always been interested in and drawn to? Think about it. Think about it. It would be such a void in her life. It turns out that it's a common regret to not allow yourself to be happy. Once Catherine committed to this part of her life, she went all in, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy schlepping that art studio suitcase around while she was working, but she did it anyway. She pivoted along the way until she created the life she wanted. And as you heard, teaching collage wasn't part of the original plan. But when you're curious and mindful, you notice things about what you want more and more. Then you have a decision to make. Start to believe in what's possible or not. Put yourself first or not. Lean into what you're passionate about even when there's no certainty or not. The choice is yours. And my amazing woman in the middle, there are so many awesome choices and experiences just waiting for you. As you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself first, my friend. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so you don't have regrets. I can help you create the success you're looking for. That's why I created the Women in the Middle Academy with you in mind, because it's a warm, supportive, and fun coaching community of like-minded women who grow forward together so that you feel great about your roadmap to a more fun, meaningful, and regret-free next chapter. Email me your questions and let's talk about it and see if it's for you. Go ahead and book your free, no-obligation momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com. Want to have a book club experience, but with this podcast instead? Join the Women in the Middle Podcast Club by heading over to SusieRosenstein.com and clicking on the Podcast Club button. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.SusieRosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 330. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.